Chapter 658. Ice cream. What's that? Has the famous Red Dragon Queen gone mad? Kazak's face showed a hint of mockery. Demons were very realistic and would not be soft-hearted just because the other party revealed a flaw. No one expected that the speed that was already at the peak of the peak could be accelerated a third time. If one had to describe the speed before this move, it would be lightning. When one saw the light, one's head would already be struck by lightning. However, after 3 times of acceleration, one's perception was almost in the realm of spatial folding. This attack speed, even Xueqi, who had absolute confidence in the Red Dragon Queen, could not help but be shaken at this moment. Be it demons or dragons, they were all races with outstanding talent. Success was 99% sweat and 1% genius. In fact, there were many beings who were willing to give up the 99%, but most of them lacked the 1%. Those who had the 1% were already envied and hated by others. Yet, this fellow was willing to put in 10 times the effort of a mortal. Kazak's sword was just that fast. Whether it was the angle, the strength of the force, or the perfection of the demonic power, everything was impeccable. This was no longer a simple talent. Without millions of practice, it was impossible to have the power to step into the realm of the extraordinary. Haha. I'm going to kill Alexstrasza. Kazak was very sure. Unfortunately, what happened next made this great demon, who had experienced countless battles, dumbfounded. If Alexstrasza used the advantage of her petite body to dodge at the last moment, causing the sharp slash of the beheader sword to miss. If that was the case, perhaps he could admit that he had underestimated the agility of the dragon aspect in human form. But the Red Dragon Queen only raised 2 fingers. Yes. She used the tips of the slightly sharpened scarlet nails on her index and middle fingers to easily catch Kazak's terrifying attack that seemed to transcend space. Just by looking, it was obvious that this terrifying giant sword was more than 10 meters long and weighed in the unit of tons. However, the queen seemed to be picking up a fallen flower petal, so gentle and satisfied. Kazak's huge body, which was several stories tall, and the queen's standard human body, staged the greatest irony on the stage of this Karla hymn theater. It felt as if the entire space-time had been completely frozen by this attack. Kazak wasn't the only one who was desperately trying to inhale air into his lungs. Xueqi and the others were doing the same. How is this possible? It was very interesting. Both sides let out the same cry of surprise. Soon after, the team of adventurers started to pant so low that it was almost inaudible. At this time, the Red Dragon Queen emphasized, "I want it today." What do you want? Even Xueqi, as the person involved, took a full 3 seconds to realize that this was connected to the previous, "my ice cream." This foodie actually said, "I want the ice cream today." Xueqi pointed at Kazak in annoyance. "The faster you get rid of this guy, the more time I have to get your ice cream." Even though Xueqi was clearly talking and laughing with the queen, Kazak was deeply afraid of the unparalleled sense of control that Xueqi and the queen exuded during their conversation. The queen's eyes moved, and the aura that burst forth from her gaze seemed to make this big demon feel as if the sky and earth were collapsing. Yes, whether it was the sky or the earth, it was all on his side that was collapsing. The surrounding temperature suddenly rose by more than 20 degrees. Even the air was buzzing, as if some invisible mysterious power was rippling through the entire theater. The next moment, Gotcha! A crack suddenly appeared on the portal around Kazak's waist. Immediately, an illusory dragon head appeared right above Kazak's body. The vanguard and commander of the Burning Legion could only watch in despair as the translucent dragon head suddenly spat out a terrifying dragon's breath of over 10,000 degrees. Whoosh. The dragon's breath that could burn everything turned into a huge pillar of fire and poured down on Kazak's head. There were no splashes of flames, and there was no magma. Under the extraordinary control, every drop of dragon's breath that tried to leave the range of the fire pillar was pulled back and continued to burn the body of this big demon. On the huge body that was several stories high, the hard skin of the demon was quickly decomposed by the high temperature. The strong muscles rapidly withered, and the strong bones were charred black at a speed visible to the naked eye. In less than 5 seconds, this big demon that could turn the whole of Karazhan upside down was dead. Huh. Alexstrasza suddenly frowned. What? Damn, most of this guy's soul did not pass through the portal. He escaped. The queen spat angrily. Xueqi did not care too much. That's right. Demons are all like this. They seem very fierce. In reality, they are more afraid of death than anyone else. Xueqi's conclusion caused the people around him to burst into laughter. The queen raised her hand, and a huge translucent dragon claw appeared in mid-air. It grabbed Kazak's remains and pulled the entire demon corpse out of the portal for her. After Kazak's huge body went through the baptism of incineration, all that was left were useless ashes and a pile of Kazak's treasures. Xueqi, do you want it? The queen did not care about these things, so naturally, Xueqi took advantage of it. Yes, why not? It's only fair to kill the enemy and take the spoils of war. Defeating the boss without looting the corpse? That was a crime in every sense of the word. I'm committing a crime. Even though Xueqi was recognized as a black hand in the game in his previous life, he would not give up on looting the corpse. As for the black hand, one had to have the ability to defeat the boss to be qualified to be a black hand. If you don't let me lead the group, you won't even have the chance to see the black hand looting the corpse. Humph. The evil Xueqi firmly defended his black hand actions in the game. An icicle spell swept up a small tornado and cooled down the high-temperature ashes at the same time. The excited Xueqi quickly used the magician's hand to take out a staff with a head that looked like a small drum and 4 strange feathers. Xueqi tossed it to Ronin. Amber seal, perfect for you. Thank you, teacher. Ronin accepted it happily. Duke gave a one-handed hammer called Skybreaker to Muradin and the 2 holy knights to discuss how to split it. He then gave the cloak, Escadar's fur, to the Windrunner sisters, and finally gave a pair of gloves called Leather of Bad Luck to Edwin. Finally, he found what he wanted the most. Shadow Eye. Chapter 659. Although the shadowy eye was theoretically something that Kazak would drop, theory was theory. Even his Karazhan had been ambushed by a demon. Perhaps Kazak's transport captain was so stupid that he didn't bring it with him? Seeing how Xueqi was so interested in this palm-sized darkness-shrouded and seemingly moving eyeball, if Xueqi wasn't a hero of the Alliance, standing at the forefront of the fight against evil, anyone would think that Xueqi was a sorcerer who had fallen into evil ways. Aurelia wanted to say something but stopped. For the sake of Xueqi's image, she didn't choose to ask on the spot. She even secretly pulled her 2 curious sisters aside. But while she could hold back, guys like Muradin couldn't. He opened his big mouth and said, "Hey, Xueqi, what do you want this thing for? I don't think it's good. Do you want a paladin to hammer it?" Gavin Rad was curious. He was sure that Xueqi must have an explanation. But Tyrion stepped forward without hesitation. Xueqi smiled. "The shadowy eye is certainly not a good thing, but I want to remind everyone that in the future, there will be another thing called the Holy Eye appearing in this world. When they were combined, there would be a chance to obtain a blessing staff. This would be a great and noble staff. If you don't trust me, I can temporarily seal this shadowy eye in the Holy Light Church in Stormwind. The Holy Light will not betray your trust, Your Excellency." Benedictus smiled and nodded. When everyone heard this, they immediately felt relieved. Intentionally or unintentionally, Xueqi glanced past the Bishop of Stormwind, Benedictus. The blessing staff, the most sacred thing in a priest's heart. Even as the years passed and people changed, many priests still placed such a special epic staff in the corner of their warehouse. It was the best wish and memory of a generation of priests. But Xueqi knew Benedictus' background. The blessing staff was a sacred treasure, and Xueqi would not give it to this guy. On the other side, the battle between the 2 bosses continued. Xueqi had everyone help the Virgin Mary deal with the Void Nether Dragon, but he and the Red Dragon Queen didn't move. "Xueqi, you're not going?" Everyone was a little puzzled. Xueqi's smile gave people a sense of absolute confidence. "I won't be going. If I or Her Majesty Alexstrasza takes action, it will be over in an instant. In the future, everyone might have to face all kinds of powerful enemies with strange abilities. This is a rare opportunity to train. Everyone, please use your wisdom and courage to deal with this Nether Void Dragon." Yes, please replace Ms. Christine first. With her help, it's meaningless. What was being pretentious? This was what it meant to be cool. There was nothing more to say about the boss's demeanor of not needing him to do anything for such a small matter. It didn't feel like Xueqi was a young man at all. Instead, it felt like he was on the same level as the Red Dragon Queen. As the guardian of Azeroth, he had protected this world for thousands of years. He was the kind of powerful existence that could suppress all gods and demons with a wave of his hand. Okay, he was cool for 3 seconds. When Aurelia asked, "Duque, what are you going to do now?" Duque had a strange expression. "I need to discuss the importance of morale with Her Majesty." Everyone suddenly remembered the ice cream that the Queen had been emphasizing. Damn, it was all to get food to please the Queen. Everyone was speechless. There was nothing they could do. Who told Duque to be the boss? Everyone understood the significance of the Karazhan spatial node in protecting the world of Azeroth. That big demon called Kazak was not someone they could deal with. If they couldn't deal with the big demon, they could deal with the small ones. These world-famous heroes of the later generations were now hired by Dukla to work for him. The Queen put her hands on her hips and waited for everyone to leave the stage. Almost as soon as everyone left, the Queen's face changed. A foodie's face. The Queen almost turned into a husky wagging her tail. "Hey, Duque, is that Häagen-Dazs ice cream delicious? I only realized that the dragon's cooking skills are terrible when I became a human a while ago." Ah, humans and high elves are magical races that really know how to enjoy themselves. Duque was speechless. The Queen shook Duque's arm, almost shaking Duque's small body. Forget about those idiots who only know how to eat their prey raw for tens of thousands of years. Even that kid Cleostras is not kind. He clearly tasted a lot of delicious food in the Dalajan, but he refused to give it to me even once. Cleostras was Krasis, right? Hey. Legend has it that Krasis is secretly in love with you. Just because I don't give you delicious food, you erase his love for you. Krasis, did I do something to make you despair? Duque's heart was trembling. It seemed that he had broken up another historical couple. Why did he use the word again? Well, anyway, Duque was from the Lovers Go to Die group. Even if he was now a traitor to the Singles Alliance, Duque decided not to care about it. Unexpectedly, the Queen kept on chattering. "When I was Legolas, I heard a piece of news. The best seasoning in the whole of Lordaeron comes from you. I didn't expect you to be a gourmet supplier." Yes. If I could travel back in time, I would definitely write a book called The Gourmet Supplier and dominate the Jianyang website in 2016. What a joke. Only Duque himself knew that it was not that his cooking skills were good enough, but that the food and seasoning methods in this world were too lousy. Even the white bread that was considered superior by the world was worlds apart from the bread that was fermented with yeast, bulking agents, and additives before Duque traveled through time. Because of transportation, salt was not available in many places. There was no butter, no peanut butter, and they had to eat dry, tasteless bread every day. Duke was too lazy to complain about all kinds of terrible things. At that moment, Duque became the master of China. At that moment, Duque became the god of cooking in the spirit of the halberd eaters. The best actor Duke looked at the Queen with a sacred aura and said solemnly, "True delicacies of the world need time, love, and creativity to polish them. Things made in haste will never be perfect. Alex Strassa, do you trust me?" The Queen quickly nodded like a chick pecking at rice. "Give me 3 days. I will make Häagen-Dazs ice cream that will satisfy you." Duque mourned in his heart. "Sorry. Häagen-Dazs, Duque, may ruin your brand." The golden color signified a bountiful harvest, which meant that the whole beef was cooked. Duke had asked Alex Strassa if she could wait. The Queen said, "It's fine. I have plenty of time." For a dragon that had lived for more than 20,000 years, what she lacked most wasn't time, but new things. Duque suddenly realized that the gadgets he brought from Earth that couldn't be found in this world could be very attractive to these guys who had almost infinite lives. Fine. The food supplier, Duque, went back to work. Since it was fake Häagen-Dazs ice cream, simple ice cream couldn't satisfy the Queen, or to be more precise, Duque's appetite. What Duque was going to make was red bean ice cream. He asked the system elf to pick out the impurities in the red beans with hands of magic and rinse the pebbles. Soak the red beans in cold water for 1 hour, add water, and cook the red beans using the method of boiling the water 3 times and braising 3 times. Boil the water 3 times, then turn off the heat and simmer for half an hour, repeat 3 times. At the same time, he broke the eggs into a small basin. He couldn't find a beater in a hurry, but it wasn't a problem for Duque. He simply rotated the hands of magic in the basin at a high speed. When the color became slightly lighter, it was a success. While beating the eggs, Duque slowly added milk and sugar and stirred. Duke and Alexstrasza slowly heated it up with a low flame, chatting about trivial matters as they heated and stirred the semi-finished products. When the pot was boiling, Duque added corn flour. Unfortunately, there was no cornstarch in this world. Duque really didn't know how to make it, so he could only replace it with ground corn flour. However, it wouldn't be a problem to fool people, no, dragons. He added the corn flour and stirred it until it was uniform. He heated it again. This time, it was more viscous. He heated it slowly with a low fire and put it into a container. Usually, what followed was a long cool down. Normally, it would take about 4 to 5 hours to freeze. Unfortunately, when Duque saw this dragon queen, who was obviously a glutton, gulping down her saliva every minute, Duque resigned himself to his fate and used magic to improve it. The great radiant moon mage Duque used his unparalleled control of magic to speed up the cooling of the ice cream as much as possible without damaging its quality. It was the same with the roast beef. About half an hour later, when the roast beef and the ice cream were almost done at the same time, Muradin and the other 8 arrived on the roof under Khadgar's lead. Yo, Duque. Those 2 monsters aren't bad. We've learned something new. Muradin's loud voice reached them before he even reached the roof. Oh, my rock ancestor. What is this fragrance? Then, everyone heard a sweet female voice. Hey, Duque, give it to me. Can you give it to me? I beg you. Hurry up and give it to me, I can't take it anymore. Chapter 661. Soldiers who had been on the battlefield knew the value of good food. The hardship of marching was not something that outsiders could understand. Walking in dense forests, if they had enough energy, they could shoot some prey and have a sumptuous meal. When marching to places like the Burning Plains or the Cursed Lands, the experience was enough to make people want to die. It was not that there was no prey, but would anyone dare to eat those monsters that had been corroded by dark energy? Moreover, roasted meat could not possibly be as delicious as Duque's whole roasted cow. What else was there to care about in war? It was already good enough to stay alive. Did they not see that even the crown prince of Kurtalas had died? Other than the Dalajan's pharaoh who could not sleep well, eat well, and would not work if their babies were not happy, the entire alliance, from soldiers to generals, did not care so much. But this did not mean that they had no need for good food. Kings and nobles would carry spices in private. Yes, it was something from Duque's side. At the height of the war, the alliance had a saying about the golden plant. It meant that Duque's spices were more expensive than gold. Of course, it was not because Duque was so expensive, it was because of the unscrupulous merchants. The big shots of the alliance naturally had Duque's supplies, but the nobles below were not so lucky. This was where Duque was smart. Others profited from war and were criticized by everyone, but when Duque made a fortune, no one could complain. Because in terms of armaments, Duque was absolutely selfless and did not skimp. But food and spices were not necessities, right? They were luxury goods, right? Yes, those unscrupulous merchants mentioned above were all secretly Duque's people. You could choose not to buy. No one would force you to buy. It was just that other people ate well and drank spicy food, while you could only eat tasteless white bread. Don't blame other nobles for looking down on you. Faced with spices that were inflated by unscrupulous merchants, good nobles would cry and dig into their wallets. After fighting a big war against the beast men, the nobles' wallets had shrunk, except for Duque. As for how much money Duque had, he did not know. After 10 million, Duque stopped counting. All right, I'll set a small goal. Before Nazul arrives, I'll earn 100 million from him first. At this time, because Karazhan had isolated part of the space, there was no cold wind blowing in, so it became a very pleasant thing. The group of heroes ate barbecued meat, drank wine, and looked at the beauties eating ice cream in the middle of the ice and snow. Actually, Duque's ice cream wasn't that amazing. According to his standards, it was about 60% of the original version. The fragrance of the milk was enough, and the taste of the red beans was also not bad. The white sugar added was not refined enough, but it was still passable. I'd rather be single than make do. This ha-something root ice cream is really delicious. On the other side, the queen had already turned her resentment into appetite. Or perhaps, her taste buds had already been destroyed by the terrible taste of raw meat and tasteless barbecue for 10,000 years. She was already overjoyed when she sneaked into Rotterdam last time. Now that she was eating this delicious food, she was so happy that she cried. Woo woo! It's so delicious! I've lived for more than 20,000 years, and this is the first time I've eaten something so delicious. Woo woo! The queen had actually learned the master-level ice cream eating godly skill. It wasn't just her exquisite ice cream eating skills, but also the intoxicated expression on her face as if she was about to orgasm. It gave Xueqi a strange sense of comfort. Perhaps every chef hoped that their customers could truly enjoy the fruits of their labor. This wasn't some kind of acting. Xueqi had once seen a set of Spirit of Drugs. Oh no, Spirit of Halberd Eating. Manga. The women in it would feel numb all over when they ate something delicious. At that time, Xueqi thought it was exaggerated. He didn't think that he would actually see it in real life now. This wasn't acting. The intoxicated expression of the beauties in front of him was the truest reflection of their feelings. Suddenly, a system notification appeared. Congratulations, host. Your reputation in the Dragon Slumber Shrine is now worship. Ha! Chapter 662. There was a question mark on Xueqi's head that no one else could see. Xueqi's face was full of confusion. In the game, players had to spend a lot of time to earn a reputation for any force. Regardless of whether it was convenient or not, at least a lot of time had to be invested. Comparisons were odious indeed. If his friends back on Earth knew that he had bribed Alexstrasza with a box of ice cream and a whole roast cow, who knew if they would curse at him? There was actually a premise for this, and that was that Xueqi had personally rescued Alexstrasza from Nesario's plot and assisted the 4 Dragon Kings in killing Nesario. This was the real unbreakable cornerstone of the relationship between the two sides. As for the ice cream, it was just a small prelude. The Dragon Sleeping Temple was the first extraordinary force that had a reputation of worship. After Xueqi came to the world of Azeroth, and it had epoch-making significance for Xueqi. Reputation in the game was more of a naked benefit, such as being able to exchange for better equipment. Reputation in the real world represented the degree of support the Force had for Xueqi. Looking at the system prompt, his Guardian authority had become, in the Guardian battle, you can specify an unlimited number of ancient red dragons to fight together as needed. The blue dragons, green dragons, and bronze dragons will definitely respond to your reasonable call. Xueqi began to understand the significance of the reputation of worship. Reputation of worship meant that the Force had already sacrificed themselves for him without any hesitation. Just like before, after the reputation of worship in Stormwind City, Lang did not even mind Xueqi drawing out the territory of Stormwind to establish his own country. The soldiers and people were willing to share half with Xueqi. What's more, after Xueqi made it clear that he only wanted to be a Grand Duke and guard the borders of Stormwind and Azeroth, Lang was even more willing to contribute money and strength. If he could give a gold coin, he would never be short of anything. It was the same for the Dragon Sleeping Temple now. As long as the Dragon Sleeping Temple identified a force as the enemy of Azeroth, they would definitely be able to attract the Dragon Clan's reinforcements. Looking at the other forces, Xueqi suddenly felt that he was doing quite well in Azeroth. The ones that accumulated worship were Stormwind City, Iron Furnace Fort, Rapid Stream Fort, and Dragon Slumber Temple. Reverence, Kull, Tiras, Nomarigan, and Eagle Nest Mountain. The other kingdoms were basically respectful. Only Rotterdam and Kuel Salis were indifferent. Lordaeron was defeated because Xueqi had repeatedly slapped Tyreenas in the face. As for Kuel Salis, Xueqi had poached his 3 strongest ranger generals. Kuel Salis was already giving Kuel Salis face by not falling out with Xueqi. Xueqi only had one question at the moment. Chapter 663. Holy Light Cathedral of Lordaeron. When the orcs invaded the city, the cathedral was lucky enough to escape the flames of war. When the Deathwing almost destroyed the palace, the Holy Light still protected the cathedral. People often said that the glory of the Holy Light would allow the cathedral and the Church of Holy Light to avoid disaster. This time, it seemed that the Church of Holy Light had used up all of its resources. Outside the pure white cathedral, every member of the clergy was in a hurry, and their faces were filled with sorrow. Even the white outer tower of the cathedral seemed to be covered in a layer of shadow. After a few major incidents, almost all the other countries of the Alliance wanted to see the people of Lordaeron suffer. Alonso's fail was not one of them. He was different from Tyreenas, who looked righteous on the surface, but was actually a hypocrite who kept scheming for the benefit of his country. Alonso's was a true and selfless saint. A long time ago in the Dalajan, a Lordaeran missionary threw a copper coin into the fountain and made a wish. I hope that one day I can spread the way of the holy light to the people and teach them the meaning of the three great virtues. Before the orcs invaded, Alonso's had been doing this. He preached throughout the entire Eastern Kingdom, spreading the light of hope to the 7 human kingdoms. In every country, in every city, he built a church of holy light, spreading the virtues, calling on people to take care of orphans who had lost their parents, calling on every sinner, and trying to pull everyone onto the path of good. When the War of the Dark Portal started, he was the first to call on all the countries to accept the refugees from Stormwind. He was also the one who mobilized the entire Church of Holy Light to continue supporting the front line during the fiercest times of the war. He was the one who comforted the people and gave them confidence and courage. And after the war, he was also the first to stand up and call on the wealthy families and nobles who had surplus funds to donate to the restoration of the Stormwind Kingdom and the Stormguard Kingdom that had been destroyed in the war. In order to fight against evil, he ran around and gave speeches. In order to promote justice, he created the great profession of paladin. In order to revive the human race, he worked hard for the revival of the other countries without rest. He was a truly noble person. If Tarina's shamed the people of Lordaeran, then Alonso's was the key to making the people of Lordaeran great again. The kings of the Alliance could ignore Tarina's, but Alonso's was a truly kind and noble old man, so the kings would always give him their utmost support. But now, without any warning, Alonso's had collapsed. At this time, almost all the kings who were still in Rotterdam gathered in the cathedral. The kings who had already left immediately returned. However, the bishops of various sizes who were dressed in gorgeous robes opened their eyes in shock, because for the first time, there was a response from the holy light in the spiritual world that was originally empty and silent. The big bell in the holy palace suddenly rang when it sensed the intense holy light that was echoing in the air. The priests rushed out of the prayer hall one after another. They saw the door of Archbishop Fail's ward open. No one opened the door. Alonso's hovered in midair under the support of the power of the holy light, and floated out slowly. Xueqi followed behind him and arrived at the center of the main hall. Alonso stood in the void like a god who had descended to the world. Every priest prostrated on the ground consciously. Every holy knight knelt on one knee and placed his right hand on the breastplate on the left side of his chest. Even the king of a country had to bow deeply to show his humility towards the power of the holy light. Alonso smiled and said, "Someone once asked me why I did not appoint the next archbishop of the holy light. At this last moment, I will answer this question." Several bishops who had once tried to fight for power immediately shivered, and subconsciously pressed their foreheads closer to the cold ground. Only a truly selfless person had the right to set foot on that holy position, and only had the right to be holy in the hearts of the people. Alonso smiled as he lowered his body and patted the shoulder of his most devout disciple. Tears of gratification flowed from the corner of his eyes. He looked up to the sky and shouted, "Praise the holy light!" Suddenly, an illusory ball of golden holy light descended on Wuther's head, forming a golden crown that looked like a garland. This was the holy light's recognition of Wuther. For a moment, everyone was stunned. After being stunned for a full 3 seconds, countless priests knelt on the ground, straightened their backs, and raised their hands to the sky. Praise the holy light. Praise holy Wuther. The next moment, everyone's voice stopped. That's right. The moment the inheritance was completed, Alonso's Fail's name became history. Wuther the Lightbringer's name became the new holy. Wuther the Lightbringer's tears flowed down his face as he hugged his teacher's limp body. On this day, with Lordaeran as the starting point, the bells of every church of light in every city and every small town in every village rang. Countless believers knelt on the ground and cried in sorrow. Everyone used this method to commemorate the passing of a true saint. Standing on the balcony of the state guest house, Xueqi looked at the holy light cathedral from afar and suddenly said softly, "Let's go. It's time to leave." Chapter 668. The mayor's face turned ghastly pale. Even if Leon had the reputation of being a wise king, who could guarantee that Leon wouldn't be jealous and resentful? How could he judge a subject as a saint in front of a king? That was a huge taboo. If it was in the past, no one would sigh for them even if they hung all the gossipers in the town on the spot. The mayor already wanted to kneel down and beg for mercy. Unexpectedly, King Leon raised his hand and raised his left palm, gesturing for them to stop. He did not care about Joseph, who had already knelt down in fear, nor did he care about the trembling mayor. Instead, he turned to Prince William and said, "Child, today I want to teach you the way of a king." "Father, please speak. I'm listening." The little prince nodded seriously. To be a wise king, the first thing you have to do is never be jealous of a minister who is more talented than you. When it comes to war, I am far inferior to your uncle Anduin. He is the god of war in the hearts of the soldiers. I am not. When it comes to strategizing and internal affairs, I can't even learn a little bit about your brother Duque. I only know that under his management, my people are living a better life. Lang shrugged his shoulders and pursed his lips, making a funny expression. All right, if I was the kind of stupid king who couldn't bear to see his minister become a saint, should I behead Anduin and hang Duque, and then let the people send me to the stake? Oh no, no. Before the people do anything, the women from the Windrunner family will first skin me alive. Oh! That's too bad. I might as well die in Storm Fortress. After hearing Ryan's words, Anduin, the ministers, and even the guards of the Wong family were all affected by Ryan's mischievous antics, and they all smiled in relief. They all knew Lang very well. This was a king who might not be the most capable, but his character was absolutely noble. You must absolutely trust the ministers who are good to the people, understand? For example, your uncle Anduin and brother Duque. William's eyes were filled with admiration. I understand now. Lang's behavior made the mayor and Joseph's family let go of their grudges, and they also opened up a chatterbox. Through their mouths, Lang truly understood how effective Duque's policy was. Since there was no need for war for the time being, Duque asked Lothar to order the army to take a break. More than 70% of the soldiers were given a break and were able to return to their hometown to participate in the reconstruction. There were only 2 requirements for these soldiers. First, they had to report back to the army after the spring plowing next year. Otherwise, they would be treated as deserters. Second, they had to wear their military tags when working in their hometown. This was to let everyone know that the kingdom had sent them back to help. They were also paid to make cotton-padded clothes for the women. They were paid to help make javelins. They were paid to take care of the lonely elderly or the sick and disabled. Soldiers on leave were paid to join the patrols. There was also a reward for killing wild beasts or orcs that invaded. As long as one could work and was willing to work, there was absolutely no need to worry about starving or freezing to death. Duque also stipulated that within 3 years, a minimum and maximum wage system must be implemented, and several profiteers who inflated prices were hanged. Moreover, taking advantage of the winter, when people could not work, the next year's farmland was distributed to each household early and seeds were distributed. In addition, because a large number of the old aristocrats had been completely wiped out, more than 90% of the people had become free people. Those who were newly appointed nobles because of their military exploits were strictly limited to the proportion of taxes. For a time, the mental outlook of the people of the country was refreshed. This was not only limited to Gold Flash Town. Lang and his group went all the way east, and it was the same at Blackwell Farm and East Valley Lumberyard. If there was any difference in different places, it was that in Duque's territory, the implementation of various policies was more resolute. Lang met the manager of the East Valley Lumberyard, Darnielle, and found that the former mage had become the director of a factory specializing in the production of magic items. The cold winter had not yet passed, but the hearts of every citizen were warm. They were looking forward to the arrival of spring, because that was the birth of a kingdom. The deceased Archbishop Alonso's Fail was a saint in the spiritual realm in the hearts of the people, and Duque was a saint in the material realm. Because of him, the people lived an unexpectedly good life. Therefore, his name became sacred in the hearts of the people. From this winter onwards, the people of Storm Country used to add the word saint in front of Duque's name. Chapter 671. Shock and unease froze on Jaina's beautiful face. Just from Duque's aura and gaze, Jaina knew that the person standing in front of her was her teacher, not her husband, Duque. What the hell? Duque is for real. It was not that Jaina did not think that Duque would be for real, but in her estimation, the probability was less than 1%. Even though she knew that her beauty was not necessarily better than Duque's rumored lovers, the Windrunner sisters. However, Jaina, who grew up in a royal family and was influenced by the nobility, still believed that she would be Xueqi's only choice in marriage. Now it seemed that she was wrong. She did not know why Xueqi looked at her with such resistance. She did not know if it was her fault or something else. Anyway, at this moment, Xueqi had completely put himself in the role of a strict teacher. Her identity as a princess was meaningless? Jaina almost wanted to refute Duke on the spot. However, she recalled the recent battle at the Dark Portal. Alterac had been destroyed, Silvermoon City had almost been taken over, and Stormwind and Stormguard had been destroyed. They had only managed to revive their countries. Jaina immediately understood what Xueqi meant. If there was no country behind her, then the so-called princess was just a meaningless princess of a destroyed country. Jaina's expression froze. Xueqi was right. Since ancient times, there was no kinship in the royal family, and the road to kingship was always filled with cruelty. Others only saw the glory of being a princess, but who would know her bitterness and helplessness if they were not at her level? Someone as smart as she already knew that her seemingly perfect marriage was actually because she was expelled from the core of Kultiraz's power. Jaina fell silent, and for a moment, she had the thought of retreating. Since ancient times, all the princesses of the Seven Kingdoms had married outside, and all of them had died of depression. If she returned to Kultiraz? No. If she really went back, even if she had to find a plausible reason. To Kultiraz, she would be a disgrace. Just look at Princess Kalia. Fortunately, she was killed. Otherwise, the fact that she was once the fiancée of Deathwing was enough to make King Tyrrhena's want to ban her for life. Yes, if she returned, Kultiraz would not protect her. Although she was very talented in magic and had great potential, she was still far from Xueqi, who stood at the peak of the alliance and was destined to become a Breaking Dawn mage. After thinking for a while, Jaina immediately made a decision. With the staff in hand, Jaina bowed respectfully. Teacher Marcus, my surname is meaningless. In front of you is only Jaina, who came to learn the mysteries of magic. It was a perfect and flawless answer. Xueqi narrowed his eyes. He could not help but sigh at the astonishing inertia of history. Jaina's intelligence and talent were indeed astonishing. He did not expect to find a survivor, and it seemed like it was the first noble lady. Oh, thank you, Ancestor Sorodin. Jaina was also very excited. She had long forgotten about surviving for 24 hours. How did you? Before she could greet him, Jaina suddenly heard a strange small sound. Whoosh! Less than half a meter in front of Jaina. A cavalry beside her was shot in the neck by a wooden spear that came out of nowhere. The impact of the spear was so strong that Jaina watched in shock as the tip of the spear entered from the left and came out from the right. It almost broke the cavalry's entire neck. Looking at the tilted head and feeling the warm blood from the wound on the cavalry's neck, Jaina finally could not help but scream. Ah! The holy knight raised his shield and blocked another spear. He shouted, "Orcs!" This was Jaina's first Valentine's Day in her life, and it was also a bloody Valentine's Day. Chapter 674. Countless orcs suddenly jumped out of the snow outside the town. They shouted in the orc language that humans could not understand, and roared as they charged towards the Rotterdam cavalrymen that consisted of only about 60 people. Apart from the orcs, there were also many slender white-skinned frost trolls. If not for that round of spear-throwing just now, the cavalry could have broken out of the encirclement with their warhorses. Unfortunately, at least 70% of the warhorses were pierced by the spears, and they neighed in pain in a pool of blood. The remaining cavalry had no choice but to use their warhorses as cover and form a circular formation to resist. If it was a battle on the battlefield, 100 orcs and trolls against 60 highly mobile cavalries, the outcome of the battle would still be unknown. When the cavalry was forced to become infantry, and had to use the smaller kite shields of the cavalry to form a circular formation, the outcome was decided. Jaina was sprayed with blood, and she was completely stunned. Some people would scream hysterically in the face of danger. They could not do anything, and would even disturb their companions, making a mess of things. Some people would show extreme survival instincts at such a moment. Like a drowning person, they would grab onto anyone they could grab, and crave for a chance to survive. There were also some people who would become calm and decisive after extreme panic. There was one last type of person who could guide their companions out of a predicament that would lead them to death. The last type of person was extremely rare, and people often called them generals. It was obvious that Jaina Proudmoore was a natural commander. In just a second, Jaina came to her senses and shouted, "Go to the church! The church is made of stone." The paladin who was the leader suddenly understood what Jaina meant. Jaina's judgment was correct. If they did not have suitable defensive measures, the 60 of them would basically die in a single charge from the orcs. Hiding in the cellar was useless. Firstly, the cellar was not that big, and secondly, the orcs' demolition ability was beyond the imagination of most people. The orcs did not even need to use hammers to demolish houses made of ordinary bricks and wood. They could just knock it down with their arms. The so-called defense of a fortified position did not work on the orcs at all. The church was different. For some reason, the church in this town was made of bluestone, and was rather sturdy. "Go! Listen to this lady." It would take the orcs at most half a minute to rush from the outskirts of the town to the town. They would be able to get there in a daze. Jaina's shout was definitely a life-saving move. The cavaliers of the Rotterdam Kingdom supported their teammates, and almost rushed into the church in the middle of the town before the orcs surrounded them. Blarg! Jaina wanted to vomit again. The church was a sacred place for the people of Lordaeron. People would naturally come to the church to seek salvation in times of danger. Unfortunately, the orcs had turned this place into a cruel slaughterhouse. Even though the corpse was already frozen, the smell of blood that had just splashed onto Jaina's body stimulated her sense of smell. None of the cavalrymen blamed this seemingly delicate young lady because she had already saved their lives. Some of the cavalrymen dragged the injured comrades deeper into the church, while the uninjured cavalrymen quickly formed a two-layered shield formation at the entrance of the church, which could accommodate 4 people abreast and was as tall as 2 men. "Thank the holy light. Thank you, wise lady." The orcs were still aggressive, but compared to setting up a formation in the middle of the town, which had a complicated terrain, the church that only needed to defend the front door was simply a holy land. There was also a side door made of bluestone that could only allow 1 human to pass through. 2 of them were enough to guard the door tightly. The orcs immediately launched an attack on the human soldiers of the church. They smashed their huge hammers over, and even with the defense of the shields, they easily broke the arm of a cavalryman. As the price, the orc died in the next moment after being stabbed by at least 7 swords of the knights. The tragic battle was going on, and the cavalrymen were constantly injured and dragged into the church by their companions. However, there were more orcs who had fallen. The cavalrymen, who were obviously veterans of the war, were extremely brave. In just 5 minutes they had killed more than 30 orcs, and only 7 of them were lightly injured, while 3 of them were seriously injured. However, there were more orcs outside. The green heads were densely packed, forming a surging green ocean. It seemed that there were at least hundreds of orcs here. A cavalryman with a broken arm took out a short-barreled flintlock and fired a shot into the sky. Accompanied by an ear-piercing sound, a dazzling red signal flare soared into the sky. It could be clearly seen even 10 kilometers away. Looking at Jaina's blank expression, the cavalryman smiled. "The thing sent by the Stormwind people is called a signal flare, which is specially used by our alliance to call for help. Although we don't like that damn Duque, but the thing he invented is still useful." Another cavalryman, who could no longer stand, panted and laughed. "Come on, we still have to wait for the Stormwind elven women to come and save us." Elven women? Jaina did not react for a moment. The elven rangers belonging to Grand Duke Marcus of Stormwind. Although their noses are pointed at the sky, they are absolutely strong in forest battles. Our people won't be able to make it in time, so we have to see if there are any elven rangers in the vicinity. If there are no reinforcements, we won't last until nightfall. The cavalryman with a broken arm smiled bitterly. Jaina gritted her teeth. "That's not necessarily true, I'm still here." "You?" Under the disbelieving gazes of the cavalryman, Jaina gritted her teeth, rolled up the hem of her mooncloth robe, took a step forward with her fair and tender legs, and stood on the back of the church's pew. "Be careful of the trolls' spears." Before the cavalryman finished speaking, he was stunned to find that there was an illusory translucent cover around Jaina. "Holy light, she's actually a Sir Wizard." The cavalrymen guarding at the front also suddenly noticed the flames coming from behind them. Before they had time to turn their heads, a cold female voice sounded, "Fireball!" Asterisk bang. Asterisk with a loud sound. A huge fireball with a long tail of flames flew over the cavalryman's shield formation and exploded in the midst of the densely packed beast men. Ah! The beast men were clearly in an uproar. They watched in horror as several of their companions struggled in the flames and rolled on the cold ground. Some beast men tried to help their companions put out the flames. They very professionally took off their animal skin clothes and patted them on their companions' bodies. This was useless. Before the fire weakened a little, the burning beast men had already returned to the embrace of their ancestors. Asterisk bang. Asterisk another fireball. This time, 4 or 5 beast men were hit. Their screams in the flames terrified their companions. Chapter 675. Unknowingly, the orcs began to disperse. Hooray! Praise you, great Ms. Mage. The cavalrymen's morale was greatly boosted. Who would have thought that the dainty noble lady they saved would be a mage? The leader of the paladins said, "Thank you for buying more time for us." Just to buy more time? If there's only one entrance, I can guard it for 3 days and 3 nights. Feeling the terrifying magic damage and mana recovery bonus of the smoke glove, Jaina decided to use a wall of fire to resist the orcs' attack. In fact, Jaina did just that. After 5 seconds of chanting, a huge wall that was 10 meters wide and 2 meters tall appeared in front of the church. More than 20 orcs were immediately affected by the flames and turned into burning human-shaped torches. The cavalrymen cheered, but the paladin smiled bitterly. "Why? Do you have a problem with my magic?" Jaina asked the leader angrily. If it were orcs from other clans, this might be enough to scare them. Unfortunately, this is the most elite warsong clan in the tribe. Almost all of the cavalrymen's bodies trembled. Even Jaina was a little familiar with the name Warsong Clan. Yes, the Warsong Clan. The Warsong Clan had made a name for themselves since South Shore. They dared to fight flamethrowers head-on, destroyed the Silverpine Forest, and even fought their way to Rotterdam. The Warsong orcs dispersed, but it didn't take long for Jaina and the others to know what they were doing. All of a sudden, there was a loud sound of glass shattering above their heads. Then there was a second sound, a third sound. Dozens of times. Countless torches were thrown in, smashing the glass windows on both sides of the church, which were at least 2 people high above the ground, and landing on the ground inside the church. Because many parts of the church were already covered in frost, it did not cause a fire. It only caused chaos among the injured cavalrymen. When a few brave cavalrymen climbed to a high and narrow window to peek outside, a cavalryman almost had his head pierced by a spear. In the next moment, there was an earth-shattering sound from all directions of the church. Bang! 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 The dull sound of the collision was like the knell of the Grim Reaper. The paladin cursed. "Damn it! I knew they would use the tree trunk as a battering ram." That's right, the orcs used their great strength to break the trees in the town, uprooting them and using them as siege walls. Although the church was made of bluestone, it was not a fortress. In fact, unless it was a fortress made of cement, most traditional fortresses were useless. He could only become the victim of this group of people who believed in strength creates miracles. She had clearly crashed into the walls of the church, but the sound that sounded like a landslide made Jaina feel as if the trees had directly crashed into her chest, flattening her ribs. Her lungs, which had shrunk into her lungs, could no longer expand and breathe in fresh air. Fight to the death. The Holy Knight raised his warhammer high up in the air without any hesitation. Fight to the death. Even the wounded struggled to get up and raised their weapons high up. Jaina did not expect that she would be in a desperate situation in just a few minutes. Bang! Bang! Bam! The orcs outside were very professional. They stopped when they were about to smash a wall. They were waiting for more breakout points to be ready. The strict management of these orcs made it hard to believe that they were just a barbarian race from a distant planet. Finally, with a rough command, more than 10 holes were blasted on both sides of the church. Every hole perfectly avoided the pillars of the church. Almost at the same time, more than 10 slender trolls jumped onto the high windows of the church, holding sharp spears in their hands. 2 long fangs were wriggling in their wide-open mouths, and they had cruel smiles on their faces. Hee hee hee. Loktar. Amidst the flying debris and dust, the burly orcs charged in, brandishing their huge weapons and roaring in a hoarse voice. Jaina, who was wrapped in a white barrier, was the main target. She only had time to use Flame Blast to send an orc flying, and the next moment, more than 10 spears were thrown at her. Jaina still managed to use Flash in her panic. The place where she stood half a second ago was nailed with countless spears. Half a second later, she was not so lucky. The 5 spears that followed behind easily pierced through her magic barrier. Ah! Jaina finally let out a scream as if she was dying. She used her arms to protect herself in vain. Duque, I won't let you go even if I become a ghost. Jaina cursed before she died. At the very last moment, a miracle happened without any warning. Jaina's glove suddenly burst out with a dazzling arcane light. Time seemed to freeze. Jaina opened her eyes, and her clear pupils were filled with shock. Roar! A fierce and majestic roar came from Jaina's gloves. The wooden spears that were thrown at her silently turned into sawdust, then into powder, and disappeared in the air. Along with this inhuman roar, everyone on the battlefield, be it the orcs who raised their warhammers and the human cavalrymen who had lost their arms and were about to use their remaining arm to stab their long swords, all froze in place. At this moment, everyone felt their strength and courage escaping from their bodies with fear in their hearts. They had a premonition that something was about to descend. It was a mysterious existence with unstoppable power. When it descended, it would dominate everything and take over the entire battlefield. In the blink of an eye, everyone knew who that it was. A huge illusory magic flag made of purplish-blue arcane energy rose from Jaina's gloves. The flag was so huge that it actually surpassed the entire church and rose outside the church. The orcs and cavalrymen subconsciously raised their heads to look at the flag. Then, be it in a very non-standard common language or a thick Lordaeran accent, the orcs and cavalrymen all said the same name, Duke Marcus. As if hearing the call of the hundreds of thousands of people, a blue light suddenly lit up beside Jaina. Before everyone could react, a young man in a blue and white mage robe stood beside Jaina, who was kneeling on the ground. With one hand holding Jaina's arm, Duque laughed and said, "Ah, you still activated the last insurance on the smoke glove after all." Chapter 676. Final Insurance. Jaina's beautiful blue eyes widened. Although she wanted to pretend to be moved to tears and snot after being rescued, in the end, Duke Marcus, you're a complete bastard. If she could bite Duque to death, she would definitely be willing to tear off Duque's flesh bit by bit. The current Jaina was far from the scheming and shrewd strong woman of the future, and this little lady could not help but fly into a rage. Unfortunately, her threatening actions were destined to be suppressed by Duque. That's right, she really attacked Duque. A flame blast flew towards Duque's face. If Duque was an ordinary person, Jaina's attack would definitely make Duque's mother unable to recognize him. Unfortunately, Duque was a radiant moon mage. Such a low concentration of magical elements would naturally dissipate when it came into contact with the elements around Duque's body. Jaina had indeed calculated this. Unfortunately, what she did not expect was that Duque actually retaliated. That's right. The moment before Jaina's flame blast was released, Teacher Duque actually retaliated with a magic counter, without the demeanor of a senior. The so-called magic counter was to instantly mobilize the elemental power in the atmosphere to disrupt the balance and circulation of the opponent's magic circuit. If it happened to counter the opponent's magic while they were casting, it would cause the opponent's entire magic circuit to be in a state of chaos for at least 8 seconds. This was only for mages of the same rank. Duque, a radiant moon, bullying an earth mage was simply shameless to the extreme. The magic circuit in her body instantly became chaotic, and Jaina almost fainted on the spot. Cough, cough, cough. The poor expired lowly choked. It was impossible for her to recover without more than a minute, and this was under the premise that she was not continuously disturbed. On the other hand, Duque's appearance undoubtedly caused an earthquake. The Lordaeran cavalry cheered thunderously. The beast men, on the other hand, were like insects avoiding a disaster, hurriedly fleeing from the town. Run! It's that devil Duque! Even the bravest warsong beast men lost their will to fight in the face of this storm flag that represented terror and death. Duque's flag represented a terrifying legend that could not be broken by the orcs. Duque's flag was like a haze that shrouded the entire beastman race. With Duque's storm flag, the beastmen would never be able to win. Although none of the beastmen were willing to admit this, Duque had turned these conclusions into reality every time. This time was no exception. Suddenly, a cold current spread out in a circular shape with the church as the center. The cold wind blew past, and the stones on the ground seemed to tremble. They spun strangely, and even followed the tiny gravel into the air. It wasn't that there was a supernatural phenomenon of anti-gravity on the ground, but that the cold air that shot up into the sky was too vast and frightening. In less than 3 seconds, the entire town with a diameter of 500 meters was covered by the cold air. The beast men who were trying to escape took large strides, but their lower bodies were frozen in a ridiculous position, because a wave of frost had quietly frozen their lower bodies. Ah! No! Ancestor! Save me! All sorts of cries sounded in the beastman language. At this moment, the Lordaeron cavalry was shocked to find that the cold air had perfectly avoided every one of them. Regardless of whether they were in Xueqi's sight, or whether they were close to the beastmen, only the beastmen were hit, and the cavalry less than 20 centimeters away were unharmed. Jaina's expression of shock also froze on her face. What kind of control is this? Xueqi raised his right hand lightly, and snapped his fingers elegantly. Snap. It sounded like the opening of the gates of hell. At least 300 illusory palms made of arcane energy suddenly appeared in the air. Magician's hand? Jaina exclaimed, seeing Xueqi for the first time. Every cavalier of the Rotterdam kingdom held their breath at this moment. No! The beastmen were terrified, waiting in despair for the final judgment of death. Countless arcane missiles poured down like a torrential downpour. Every high-ranked arcane missile shot by a radiant moon great wizard had the destructive power of a ballista. Under Jaina's incredulous gaze, just as the cavalry opened their mouths in shock, the beastman army that could easily drown them was easily crushed. Jaina was very reluctant to use the word crushed to describe the shocking scene before her eyes. However, it was the most suitable word. The heavy hammer that could easily smash a cavalry's kite shield turned into metal scraps after coming into contact with an arcane missile. The burly beast men that were 2.5 meters tall were easily blown into pieces like broken puppets. Broken fangs, bulging eyeballs, rainbow-colored brain matter, innards that couldn't be described, and broken bones that were scarlet with a hint of white. If the church was a slaughterhouse of the past, then what was presented in front of Jaina now was an uncensored live broadcast of a slaughter. Blarg! Jaina had thought that she couldn't vomit anymore, but she didn't expect that when her stomach was empty, she could still vomit yellow bile. After vomiting with much difficulty, Jaina's body trembled as she finally spat out, "Xueqi, you bastard! Don't even think of marrying me in this life." Xueqi smiled, as if his plan had succeeded. "Very good. Very powerful. I like what you said." Jaina almost fainted from anger at Xueqi. There were no beastmen left. No, there was one left. A beastman that was clearly more muscular than the others had 2 broken arms, and was kneeling in pain near the entrance of the church. The crippled beastman struggled to stand up. He glared with bloodshot eyes and roared. Unexpectedly, he spoke in the standard human language. Why? Duke Marcus, why didn't you kill me?" Jaina and all the cavalrymen looked at Xueqi in shock. To be able to kill hundreds and thousands of beastmen with such precision, and yet only break the arms of this beastman, it was obvious that Xueqi did it on purpose. Xueqi let go of Jaina's arm and walked to the entrance of the church with his hands behind his back. On the stairs, he raised his chin 45 degrees and looked down at the tall beastman. "Tell Grom Hellscream. Get out of the Eastern Kingdom. As long as I, Duke Marcus, am here, there will be no place for beastmen. If you really piss me off, even if I have more important things to do, I will comb through the Tirisful glades and hang every beastman." Chapter 677. His sonorous and forceful voice reverberated in the sky that had become silent once more, and it was like a blade or a sword that was engraved into the hearts of everyone. Xueqi could tell that the beastman was a 1,000-man commander. If it was the war-song tribe of the past that had hundreds of thousands of warriors, a 1,000-man commander would not even be in the list. Now that the tribe had been crushed and most of the remaining beast men had fled back to the dark portal, losing 1,000 men was enough to make Grom's heart ache. It was not that Xueqi did not want to exterminate the war-song beast men. Unfortunately, the beast men had found a way to deal with the alliance, digging tunnels. Their main camp was in the future Hearth Valley, which was mostly mountainous. Then, the war-song beast men who had awakened a strange talent almost hollowed out the mountain. If he faced Grom Hellscream on flat ground or in a forest, the current Xueqi had at least a 70% chance of killing him. With the help of the Windrunner sisters, it was 90%. In a place like the tunnels, where only the brave would win, If he did not drag corpses to revive, Xueqi would not even have a 20% chance of winning. The only fortunate thing was that the beast men were not a race that was good at self-sufficiency. Their large demand for meat meant that they had to frequently come out of the tunnels to forage for food, whether it was hunting or attacking human villages. Xueqi did have the ability to exterminate the warsong beast men, but that would require him to mobilize at least 30,000 dwarves and 50,000 human soldiers. If he did nothing and surrounded Grom for a year and a half, the warsong tribe would have to kneel no matter what. Unfortunately, the price was too high, and it was not in line with the interests of Stormwind City and Iron Furnace Castle. This was why Xueqi could let the Windrunner army continue to bleed the warsong beast men, but could not exterminate the warsong tribe. Xueqi knew that if he let this beast man with 2 broken arms go back, there would be a smaller version of Kargath Bladefist. Xueqi did not care. As long as he could exert enough psychological pressure on the future core figure of the tribe, that was enough. As expected, the beast man was on the verge of collapse. Ah, bastard! Duke Marcus. One day, the tribe will make you pay. The orc Chili Arch roared like a wounded beast. Ha 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 ha. Xueqi laughed maniacally. Your first great chieftain, Blackhand, is no good. Not the second great chieftain. Wait until you elect the third great chieftain to come and die. I will use your blood to tell you who the eternal nightmare of the tribe is. Ha 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 ha. Xueqi's laughter was very arrogant and presumptuous. To the orcs, it was the laughter of a devil standing at the peak of evil. In the ears of humans, there was an indescribable sense of pride. Unknowingly, every cavalryman of the Rotterdam kingdom straightened their backs. Even though they were injured and their broken arms were still hurting, their hearts were filled with heroism. That's right. Duke Marcus. Only such a heroic man could be called a hero of the Alliance. Only such a brave and wise man could annihilate the millions of orcs. As expected, Xueqi was the flag of the Alliance. Unknowingly, the eyes of the Rotterdam Kingdom's cavalrymen were filled with tears. Jaina was a little dazed. She hated this feeling. She knew that it was that bastard Xueqi who pushed her to this barren north. She knew very well that this town that was attacked by the tribe must have been lured here by Xueqi. It could be said that she was forced into danger because of Xueqi's scheme. A terrifying commander who could toy with millions of orcs in the palm of his hand. It would be too fake to say that he did not even think of this. And this fellow, who did not look remorseful, did not seem to want to deny this. She should hate him for messing up her first Valentine's Day and her dream of a perfect 14th birthday. After thinking it through, she realized that Xueqi was telling her that this was the orc tribe that her father and the entire Kurtira's kingdom had been fighting for the past 2 years. This was the battlefield that her brother Drake had sacrificed his life for. And she. Perhaps this was in line with one of her dreams. Xueqi did not seem to treat her as a political tool, nor did he treat her as a woman. Instead, he nurtured her as an important mage in the Alliance. Jaina did not know whether to laugh or cry. However, Duke was able to use Army Destroyer all by himself. Such a mighty figure caused Jaina's heart to flutter. Because at this moment, Xueqi and the legendary hero Xueqi had silently overlapped. More specific, more clear. Oh! The orc Chiliarch left in a very manly way. He pressed his bleeding arms against one of the hammers that Jaina had just burned red. The high temperature quickly scorched his wounds and stopped the bleeding. Obviously, this was something he had learned in the Silverpine Forest that was like a fiery hell. The paladin captain who led the team came over and bowed to Xueqi respectfully. Greetings, Your Excellency. I am the captain of the 3rd Garrison of Tirisfal, Baron Thorad Kashan. Excuse me, are you Grand Duke Marcus? That's me. Thank you for your help. Without you, perhaps we would have all been wiped out. Then he glanced at Jaina, who was covered in blood. I'm sorry to disturb you, but can I ask what's going on? Because of a mistake in the teleportation spell, Princess Jaina Proudmoore accidentally came to Tirisfal Forest. It was you who bravely protected Princess Proudmoore under the siege of 1,000 orcs until Grand Duke Marcus arrived. Brave warriors, you not only fought against the evil orcs, but also protected the beautiful princess. You did a good job and deserve a reward. Xueqi took out a piece of craft paper and a quill, patted it on the wall, scribbled down the general process, and stamped his own seal. Take this to your commander, or even to His Majesty Menethil. You will be rewarded. Lordarans and Cult Tiras. And this is my small private reward. Duque took out a bag of gold coins for the paladin and a pair of paladin gloves made by the dwarves of Iron Stove Castle. Cashin and his men were immediately moved. Jaina, the little princess of Kultiras, was so angry that her teeth itched. It was Duque who had deliberately dug a pit for her to jump in, and even included the cavalry in the pit. They had worked for you, but you made it seem as if Jaina's spell mistake had caused them to suffer heavy losses. But as smart as she was, of course, she would not expose Duque on the spot. After politely thanking him, she teleported back to Karazhan with Duke, even quieter than a well-behaved wife. Chapter 678. After Duke and Jaina went out, in Karazhan, Jaina's maids and attendants were all discussing it in private. The soul of gossip that had existed since ancient times was burning. Do you think that the Grand Duke and Her Highness will do that? Definitely. No one can resist Her Highness's charm. Now that Her Highness is the only princess left in the world, any normal man would know what to do. I still don't think they will go straight to home plate. That's hard to say. Isn't the Lake of Wind in the East Elven Forest beautiful? What if the scenery is too beautiful? Yeah. Back then, I was mesmerized by the scenery of the sea, and then I lost my chastity to that bastard Anthony. Hey! I heard that His Majesty Proudmoore and Miss Golden Sword also had sex on the ship back then. Sylvanas, who was not far away, sneered when she heard this. She turned around and teased Elugia. Yo, little Elugia, aren't you afraid that Duque will act impulsively and let little Jaina come ashore first? Hee hee. Elugia shook her head firmly. Sister Sylvanas, you also know about Duque's plan. I'm just afraid that Duque will go too far and not know how to keep it. Queen Sylvanas smirked. That's not necessarily true. Our Duque is so popular. Besides, that playboy, didn't he hide a real princess before? Shoo. Elugia raised her index finger in front of her lips and nervously made a shushing gesture. Pfft. They are not elves who can hear the whispers of the wind. Queen Sylvanas shrugged indifferently. I really don't know what's so good about Duque. Eldest and third sister are like this. And so are you. Everyone is dead set on that kid. Elugia's pretty face turned red. He. Hey. Do you want to make a bet with me? Let's bet on whether Duque will do anything to little Jaina. Let's bet. Elugia agreed a little angrily. What's the bet? Sylvanas asked with a hint of mockery. Let's bet on him doing something within his power. All right. Just as the two of them made their vows, Elugia felt an arcane wave coming from the other side. All of Karazhan was in a state of strict spatial lockdown, especially from the direction of Azeroth. With Duque and Khadgar's efforts, most of the spatial rifts had been moved to the original location of the Knight's Nightmare. It was now guarded by the Einherjar, the Saintess of Chastity, and the giant arcane constructs led by the Curator. The stables, parlor, and ballroom at the main entrance had been refurbished. Even the opera house would be reopened soon. This arcane wave was a portal that could lead directly to the front door. Only Duque and Elugia had the authority to open it. Duque returned with Jaina. Gianna's appearance caused all of Kultiras' maids and servants to cry out in alarm. Your Highness! What's wrong? Jaina's head maid rushed up in panic, and she glanced suspiciously at Duque. It's not my blood. I'm fine. Jaina, who had calmed down, quickly got to the point. I went through a cruel magic trial, and now I just want to take a good bath. Even though Jaina comforted the maids, her appearance was too horrifying. Her entire upper body was dyed red with blood, as if she had fallen into a pool of blood for an evil ritual and was then fished out. At this moment, even though no one said anything due to Duque's authority, every Kultira citizen felt a deep resentment towards Duque. What happened to the romance that was promised? What happened to the wonderful Valentine's Day? It's fine if you don't want to date our precious princess, but you even got yourself covered in blood. What the hell is this? Duque ignored the murderous gazes of the maids and shrugged. On the other side, Sylvanas, who came up to greet him, had a slightly pretentious expression of surprise. Is it that bad? Elugia and Khadgar nodded at the same time. Before Jaina could go far, one of the maids beside her had already vomited, because the maids had seen the pieces of internal organs stuck to the back of Jaina's shoulder. Elugia gave Duque a ladylike bow. Seems like it's more suitable for me to go. Although Elugia looked gentle and weak, She had fought thousands of miles with Xueqi in the past, and had seen even the most tragic of battlefields. She was 100 times better than the maids who had never seen blood. Ilusia, this is my loss. Savannah's was very straightforward. Ilusia waved her hand as she left, indicating that she had heard him. In the hall, only Xueqi and Savannah's were left. Yo, Xueqi, you really don't regret what you did? Regret what? His Majesty Dahlin handed his daughter over to an archmage who killed the most orcs in the Alliance as a disciple. He should have been mentally prepared for this. Xueqi looked indifferent. You're really willing to be so cruel to such a delicate little girl? Queen Sylvie put her hands on her hips in surprise. Is this still the Duke Marcus who used to be obsessed with beautiful women, who gave magic roses everywhere and used magic to please girls? Xueqi blushed. All right, stop teasing me. Times have changed. Maybe there will be 2 to 5 years of peace, but the symphony of destruction has already begun. First, Jaina does have the talent to be a hero. Second, the one who can stand by my side in the end must be a powerful woman who can protect herself in any crisis. Savannah's was not stupid. She immediately realized that she was in Xueqi's hunting range. Bastard! Do you want to kill all 4 of us Windrunner sisters? Do you want to die? I'll say this first, I don't like you. Don't flatter yourself. Xueqi touched his nose awkwardly. I didn't say that. Humph. That's good. Savannah's turned around, showing the back of Duke's head, and left without saying anything. On the other side, in the bathroom of Karazhan, Jaina could not count on the maid. She could only ask her best friend and spy Xueqi sent, Ilusia, to wash her body. She washed her body with warm water over and over again, but no matter how she washed, she could still feel the disgusting smell of blood in her nostrils. Human, orc, the cavalryman whose neck was pierced by a spear, the warriors who died in front of her, the orcs who were smashed into pieces by Xueqi's magic. Everything that happened today uncontrollably replayed in her mind. Jaina shrunk her body and put half her face in the water. She blew bubbles out of boredom. Poof 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 poof. The next moment, an illusion appeared in Jaina's vision. She was not soaking in clean water, but in a pool of blood. Wretch! Jaina hurriedly got up and vomited again. Chapter 679. Are you all right? Ilusia patted Jaina's back lightly. Maybe I wasn't used to it at first. When I saw the battlefield for the first time, my reaction was similar to yours. I went back and threw up for 2 days. Damn it! Xueqi ruined my Valentine's Day and my birthday. Jaina looked like she wanted to eat Xueqi alive. I'll remember him for the rest of my life. Ilusia could only shrug helplessly. She could not speak up for Xueqi. Of all the days, he had to pick a time like this. Wasn't this just torturing people? Ilusia sighed. Yes. Little Jaina, it'd be best if you could beat him up with magic in the future. He's really despicable sometimes. Jaina was very smart. She could tell from a few words that Ilusia was still on Xueqi's side. She had an indescribably strange feeling. Was this her best friend who was likely to snatch her man? Jaina decided to wait and see. Here, tell me more about Xueqi. Why, are you starting to give in to him? No, to conquer an enemy, one must first fully understand him. All right, so she had already become an enemy. Then, Xueqi, don't blame me for selling you out. Of course, I don't believe that Jaina at this level can handle you. At this moment, in the master bedroom on the highest floor of Karazhan, Xueqi had returned with Aurelia and Sasha. Sylvanas continued to command the Windrunner's Rangers in place of them. Sasha rushed over like a bird returning to its nest and gave Xueqi a kiss. Xueqi, I'm so happy. When you made this Valentine's Day, I almost thought you were going to make a festival in Stormwind just for Jaina's arrival. Aurelia took off her white coat and laughed. If this is also Valentine's Day, then this must be a bloody Valentine's Day. Sasha tacitly stepped aside to let her elder sister and Duke hug each other. After a round of exchanging words and tongues, Xueqi brought the 2 sisters to the table that had already been prepared. The nobles basically didn't talk during the meal, and even if they did, they would do so in whispers. But at Xueqi's place, they didn't have to worry so much. They continued to chat as they ate. Speaking of which, do you really like Jaina's talent that much? Aurelia had always been curious. She didn't understand why Xueqi was willing to nurture Jaina with all his might. even though he clearly rejected Jaina personally. Xueqi cut off a small piece of steak and swallowed it. He wiped his mouth with a napkin and said, "First of all, her magic talent is top-notch. She's the same as Ronan, a Breaking Dawn great wizard." From Xueqi's mouth, this evaluation could not be said to be low. The Windrunner sisters froze. Then, given her identity as a princess, she'll be able to do a lot of things if there are any major changes in the Rotterdam kingdom in the future. But she had a very special characteristic, and that was that she was too rational. She was used to weighing the value of everything on both ends of the scale. This could be a good thing or a bad thing. In a bad situation, she could be the next great traitor, Pyranod. After hearing this, Aurelia couldn't eat any more. Then, "It doesn't matter. That's why I gave her a strong dose of medicine." Regarding Jaina, Xueqi had actually thought for a long time. If it was according to the original history of Jaina, Xueqi would definitely kill her with a stick. Damn it, the so-called alliance with the tribe against the evil forces, this was equivalent to selling Dad, who didn't see the big picture and destroyed the cooperation between the tribe and the alliance, to Rexer and Thrall. When Dad died, he would come out and shed a few drops of tears. Looking at the original history, apart from that time when Mount Hyjal resisted the Arkharons, Jaina mostly flirted with the tribe when she shouldn't have. When she really had to ally with the tribe, Theramore, her life's work, was flattened by the great chief, brain-dead Roar, with a nuclear-level magic bomb, focusing Rainbow, causing her to lose her mind. At the end of the day, it was because Jaina was too smart and too rational most of the time, forgetting that human society was ultimately maintained by human emotions. Xueqi's strong medicine was the brutality of the orcs. In the original timeline, Jaina was younger than she was now. Jaina, who hadn't experienced the war at the Dark Portal, had grown up in the Dalajan, the sealed holy land of magicians. She hadn't seen the brutality of the orcs, so when she first came out after growing up, she felt more sympathy for the orcs who were enslaved by humans. She felt that the orcs were the victims, and she couldn't understand the hatred and bigotry of her father, Dai Lin, towards the orcs. Now, Xueqi had taught her a very important lesson in advance. Talent could be cultivated, but heroes couldn't be replicated. Why? It was simple. All education could be repeated, but life experience couldn't be repeated. Even if it was the same trial, exploring an unknown dungeon for the first time and sending people to harvest after the exploration were two completely different levels of tests. Originally, Jaina had been too successful. She had been raised like a Virgin Mary in a greenhouse. Now that Xueqi told her, "This world is cruel, and if you can't take it, go back and be a greenhouse princess," it would obviously change the course of Jaina's life. That night, when Xueqi fought with the Windrunner sisters, King Dai Lin of Kul Tiras received the news. Reading the magic message that was more than 1,000 words long, Dai Lin was stunned for a long time. His lover, Jaina Kingsword, placed her hands on his shoulders and massaged his shoulders. After Dai Lin's queen passed away, she was the actual queen. However, she had never tried to stand in front of the throne, nor did she try to make her and Dai Lin's illegitimate daughter officially join the royal family. She was satisfied with her current position, and she didn't want to cause any trouble for Dai Lin. Therefore, Dai Lin trusted her very much. Xueqi really dared to do it. Dai Lin was conflicted. He didn't know if he should be angry or laugh. "He's been rejecting me since the beginning. His attitude hasn't changed at all," Jaina reminded Dalen. "I thought he was never a real politician. If he was the kind of man who constantly compromised for political victory, he wouldn't have become the Alliance's hero. Isn't that right?" "Bastard, I want him to be my son-in-law." Jaina laughed. "Now, he's just fulfilling his responsibility as a teacher. Even if you make a scene in the Alliance, no one will support you. Don't forget, you gave him your sword and asked him to fulfill his responsibility as a teacher." Dai Lin felt like he had shot himself in the foot. "Bastard. I'll teach him a lesson one day." You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.